Hi guys, Whisky Geek here. Excited to be marking another Whisky Wednesday by doing a little bit of an unboxing of some Game of Thrones whiskies. It's been far too long that the Americans have had them, been enjoying them, and we've just had to sit quietly in Europe waiting for them to come to us. So I've had these on pre-order since they were available pretty much. I've not gone for the whole range, I've just picked the ones that interest me for the whisky, and I fully intend to open them, enjoy them, share them around. They're not collector's items to me, they're for drinking. So to start off, I've got the Lagavulin 9-year-old, and that's House Lannister. Now, I'm not a Game of Thrones buff. I haven't watched it since Joffrey met his demise. Spoiler alert. I think everyone probably knows by now. As soon as he got what he deserved, I was pretty much done. My wife isn't the biggest fan, so it was tough for me to stay up to date with it, so I just fell behind. Next up, Talisker Select Reserve, and that's House Greyjoy. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of Talisker. I've tried most of their core range and it hasn't quite settled with me. That's normally something which is overcome by having a bottle and working my way through it, so I thought this was worth a shot. Next up is Clynelish, House Tyrell. Now I actually got two Clynelish, and that's because of the high ABV, and Clynelish is a distillery that I want to get a little bit more familiar with. I want to try more of their whiskey, and it's also an excellent base for doing your own home blends. It takes really well to other flavours, and surprisingly with the Clynelish 14, I found that some of the heavier whiskies help to bring out its flavours. I think I dumped some Lagavulin 16 in there with it recently, and it took a really fruity tangerine turn. It worked really well. And then finally, the Oban Bay Reserve, which is the Night's Watch. It's quite a mean looking bottle. Again, Oban is a distillery which I'm not all that familiar with. So now I want to super quickly do some initial impressions, some quick notes, but I'm not sure where to start. I guess I'll just start as I poured them, as they've had a little bit more time to breathe that way. So this is the Lagavulin. It's got quite a good whack of medicinal peat. A little bit metallic, seaweedy, kind of coastal brine. It's opening up to some fruity tones now. Something a little bit banana-y to it. Have you ever had those like dried banana flakes? It's hidden behind the peaty smoke, but it's quite a fresh, uplifting tone. And that was fairly interesting for a Lagavulin. It was quite green and fresh, still something a bit herbal. The peat and the smoke don't come through all that strong on the palate. I mean, they're definitely there, it is a Lagavulin. You can tell that they've toned it down, they've tried to make it more friendly, more accessible, which props to them. It's a great thing that they're doing here by trying to, play off of Game of Thrones to bring more people into the whiskey market. It's not that similar to any Lagavulin I've ever tried before. It's a little bit warming, a little bit peppery, there's a sweet tone. Then on the finish, the aromas from the nose kind of come back. A bit metallic, seaweedy, briny, and a wave of smoke. So I enjoyed the Lagavulin. I think it's going to open up quite nicely as you work your way down the bottle. Most whiskies, they have a tendency to kind of disperse and more flavours become prominent as you work your way down the neck, down the bottle. It starts off nice, but I can see it getting even nicer. Quick cleanse of the palate. So next up, Talisker. Again, that's opening with some sweet tones. That doesn't remind me of any Talisker I've ever tried before. Caramel and fudge, quite brown sugars. A little bit resinous. Kind of a winey high note. A nice mouthfeel, a little bit musty. Quite musty. But again, there's that sweetness, kind of fudgy. This is seriously unlike any Talisker I've ever tried. So if this was in a blind tasting, I'd probably never register it as a Talisker. Something a little bit solventy. I wouldn't say it was smoky, but that might just be because I'm following on from a Lagavulin. There's some warmth like cloves on the finish. All in all, it seems relatively simple, but in a fairly pleasant way. Not a lot else to say about that one, to be honest. So this is the Clynelish Reserve, and it's bottled at 51.2%. So it's got a little bit more of an alcohol kick to it. If you go in and nose it, just quite tentatively, quite gently, and see if you feel any prickle on your nostrils. That being said, it seems really soft to me, but if it does feel too alcohol-y, too solventy, too prickly to you, just add a touch of water, tone it down a little bit. Seems really soft, it's kind of elderflowers, a little bit citrus, a good depth, a good body. There's something, and this is a tasting note which I get somewhat frequently and I feel like it might put people off, but it shouldn't. There's something a little bit kind of gluey, not in a bad way though, if you believe me. A bit leathery, tangerines. It's all in the subtleties with this one, you know, the delicate aromas. You could get lost on just going, it smells kind of like whiskey, but there's a load behind it if you work through it. That's really promising to me for having just opened the bottle. Cereally and grainy, a little bit leathery must. There is quite a prickle on the palate. If it feels a little hot, a little sharp on the palate, then again, try toning it down with a little bit of water. There's quite a soft fruity note to it. It's a little bit waxy. If you find this video because you're a fan of Game of Thrones and not so much au fait with whiskey, then these will probably sound like really weird flavours and aromas to be pulling from a whiskey, but they work, they kind of blend together, they homogenise into something that's really pleasant, really soft. Even at 51%, that is fairly easy drinking. Again, I can see it opening up quite nicely as the bottle works its way down. The finish is kind of left quite solventy. A little bit of spices, it's not just peppers, there's a little bit more around it. But most of that sweet fruity note is gone. It's quite a nice musty tanniny note on the finish though. So next up is the Oban, the Night's Watch. Seems a little creamy, some caramel tones. Again, super friendly, accessible. Really soft and a little bit floral. Bit of a grainy tone, a resinous must is coming through. It's kind of mellowing out on woody tones, a gentle hint of pepper. A bit oily on the palate, but it dwells on those woody tones and the pepper. That was an interesting tone on the finish. Really, really herbal, like a tarragon or something. So there's a gently bitter wood tone, and there's like tea, green leaf tea. Really herbal. A little bit of a peppery prickle. I'm looking forward to spending some time with that one and seeing how it evolves. Now I am going to get around to doing full reviews of these at some point, but as a quick summary, you gotta say props to Diageo. This is a great way to tap into a market and bring more people into appreciating whiskey. These are all decent whiskies. There are some of these that maybe seem a little bit simple, but they're all kind of targeted at bringing new people in. They're kind of introductions, but they're not introductions in a bad way. I don't feel like any of these have kind of copped out and just gone for a really Speyside-y, you know, fruity style, just give them loads of sugar and bore people. They're all interesting in their own right. I can see this being a good entry for Lagavulin. You know, it leads into their core expressions quite nicely, but at the same time it's not going to scare people away. This Talisker seems steps apart from the ones that I'm familiar with. There was very little smoke. Again, that might be down to the fact that I followed on from the Lagavulin. That could have been a poor step in judgment, but it seems super friendly. Of the four of them, the Clynelish probably had the most prickle, the most bite, but that's what you'd expect from a high ABV. If you've bought this one and you're trying it, just add a couple of drops of water, tone it down a bit. Eventually you'll hit a level where you feel comfortable with it, and it might even open some of the flavours to you. And again, the Oban, I feel like it's got plenty of complexities that are going to evolve and come out as I sit with it. So I'm super happy with all of these. I think they're going to develop into really nice whiskies and I'll really enjoy sitting and appreciating them. I'm also really happy that Diageo have chosen to do this, and the way that they've done it, I think they're going about it the right way. They're actually looking to bring people into appreciating their distilleries, into appreciating their whiskey's character. If you've bought some of these whiskies to sit in a cupboard somewhere and just let them appreciate in value, I implore you to give it a second thought. Crack them open, that's what they're for. Enjoy them, share them with friends. They're great whiskies. So thanks for watching, guys. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please chuck a like and a comment below, and consider subscribing for the follow-up reviews and other whiskey related antics. Cheers!